So last time we looked at employees and permissions. So we looked at how you can set up employee records in the system users to give people the ability to log into Creatio. A little bit as to assigning licenses to those users and how you can define permissions for what those users can see and do with the operation permissions and the object permissions in Creatio. So today, the plan is to look at some reporting. I'm going to look at the reporting options, review dashboards a little bit that we've touched on, but I'll just show you some of the pages you can set up dashboards, look at printables that you can set up in Microsoft Word on Windows machines through an add-on that Creatio offers, and then generate based on a template from Creatio a Word file. So that, like, if you think of it like a templated letter that Creatio can then stick the relevant information in. After that, we'll look at portals, and then we also have on the list today integration. So look at a little bit on how you can set up the web service integration functionality in Creatio. So with that, I'm going to get screen sharing going, and we'll look at my Creatio instance. All right. Should be able to see Creatio now, and I should see my home screen that says "Hello, Kevin."
Indeed.
All right. So this is one of the first pages that we can set up as a place to do some reporting. You can have dashboards here that welcome the user when they first log in. If I go down to this bottom right corner here, you'll see this tiny little monitor screen where I can have a couple different desktops that are available to users, so that Creatio comes with some standard ones based on the different applications we've talked about, that they have a marketing application, a sales application. So they have a default starting point desktop for each one of them. And then there's the studio desktop that is like your processes that have been running in the background, something a system admin would need to say. You can make changes to them by clicking this button here. If you see in the bottom corner of the studio desktop option, there's this like little button with some sliders on it that will open the Freedom Designer page for making changes to this desktop. It'll take a second to come up. Then you can see that I've got a couple dashboards. There's a name thing with a macro, which we'll see a couple of today, actually, that says current user recipient name. The contrast is super great on it, but let me see if the bar will come out. There we go. You should be able to see that a little bit better over here at this text. And the macro here just tells Creatio what data to put in it. In this case, you'll see that current user variable that I think we looked at with business processes, if I remember correctly, that is who is current. It's really just the user that is currently looking at or performing the action you're doing. So like I'm looking at the desktop in the situation where it says "Hi, Kevin," so therefore I'm the current user. Yeah, and then I could go and add more dashboards to here just by picking from the side of the page. If I wanted to put a pipeline on, very similar to our page designer we looked at earlier, that I can just add more dashboards to it and the page will expand as needed. All right, so that's one place you can have some reporting. Options that you can build up dashboards for a desktop. And just to point out, because they're a little tucked away, if you need a new desktop, if you go to your system designer and then all the way down here to setup appearance, there's setup view, and then underneath the setup appearance, you build desktops in the screen, which will pop up for controlling the picture background in the new Freedom shell. And then down here is desktops, and you can add a new desktop. That's where they can be created initially. All right, so that's desktops. The second option is a home page, which you can see I have the sales workspace connected here or selected here, and that first option is the home page. Home pages can be set up at the top of a given workspace, and you can have a different home page per workspace that is, at least the way I like to set up relevant data for that workspace. So the sales workspace has sales data. Yeah. The desktops and the sales are kind of similar in their idea that they give you a summary for that type of data when you first log in, but they have the slightly different functionalities working a little bit independently of workspaces. When it comes to desktops, they can you can have a like the studio desktop and have the service workspace selected, if that makes sense. Whereas the sales homepage will really only show up at the top if you have sales selected. You can see the homepage is gone if I switch to all apps. And if I wanted to make changes to the sales homepage, I can click this tiny little gear up here in the top right corner, which will open the designer. And same thing, the page should look similar. Dashboards show up. I can change it how I choose. Yeah. Just because we've looked at the designer a couple of times, I don't want to spend too much time going over it, but the elements are very standard now across all pages where you would do designing with the wizard. Like the homepage wizard isn't really any different than the page you would use to design like a section record page or a section list page. The differences come more in how the pages are set up to function rather than the components that you can assign to them. So you can put whatever pieces on whichever screen you want as long as it makes sense for your use case. To make a new home page, same thing or similar thing, not quite the same thing, but you go System Designer and then down to Setup View. Instead, this time you're going to go Workplace Setup. And then you pick the workplace you want to have a home page or edit the home page on. So I say I'm going to go to Sales. And then there's this field up here on the left where it says homepage. And you can see right now it's the sales homepage. I could pick to change it to something else. Maybe I had like a homepage for sales that I built myself that I wanted to replace the out of the box sales homepage. I can say that I want to make a copy of the sales homepage. It'll copy and open my copy so that I can start editing it in case I wanted to like start with the sales page as it is, but make some changes and not overwrite the Creatio version. Yeah, I can open the page design here with this box and the arrow. Or if I clear the field, Creatio will recognize I don't have a page and give me the option to make a new one. In all of the situations, will open the same page designer we were just looking at. And then you're off to the races and you can start building your page. So those are your options for essentially welcoming users when they log in with useful data to get them started. Just real quick on dashboards before we move on as well. We looked at when we did the page designer that it's very easy now to embed reports to sections now, so that if you wanted to say put on like a contact record page, you could do it in the old UI, but you can also now much more easily, because it's the same page designer, drag reports on and say you wanted to do like a record completion for a contact to try to encourage data quality. It'd be like 5 or 6 different fields that need to be filled in. Adding a little gauge to say that you're 85% of the way there is much more simple, just coming into the dashboard and you're able to drag it onto the page. You have to define how you want to score the record, but that kind of reporting you can put in, say like put a record completion gauge, or maybe you want some kind of area graph or a bar graph, whichever is useful to view your data. It's very easily added to the record page by just dragging and dropping and then setting up the chart. Just you can go ahead and open it up, and all you have to do is define what object you want to use. I know we've looked at these a little bit, but so you say like I want to do activities, I want to count them, and I want to count them by, so I want to say maybe do like activities by month. So I'm going to do activities, group them by the start, of the activity. And then because it's a date field, Creatio is going to recognize that I need to know what kind of format. Do I want to have it down to the activity by the hour or by the day, or do I just want to do it by the month and the year? If I'm doing it by month, I usually like to do month and year just to make sure that I'm not crisscrossing years at all. But once I fill that in, you can see the Creatio now is able to give me a preview of what the chart will look like, that there was barely anything in February, but if you get up to this month, there's a lot of activities. And then I can further filter the record by say, like, I only want to do where status is equal completed. So like, it doesn't matter if we schedule a call with this contact. I want to see the ones we actually completed with the contact, and dashboard will react to it. You can click save, and then now it should be able to show up on my page. And then if I click off and I click back on, it should let me connect it to the section. Yeah, apply filter by page data. So that's how it is. So you can see I added, if I open up the dashboard, that's a little odd UI wise, but I'll show you. So if I do chart setup, when I was defining the structure, there's this tab here. Right now, there's only one tab. That's one series of data. So I could do, say, like the activities that are completed. And then if I wanted another series, I can copy it and say activities that were not started. And that'll have a different series of data, which I usually will change to a different color so that they stand out and I can tell which one's which. Yeah. But where Creatio's put the connect with section data so that I can ensure that I'm only looking at activities for a given contact. Like I opened Andrew Wayne's record. So I don't, when I'm here, probably as a user, I only want the Andrew Wayne records because otherwise it might get a little confusing. I want to see the meetings we've had with Andrew Wayne. The way I tell the chart that I want it to filter by a given contact is I have to go to the listed chart series here, click the three dots, and then do edit. And then it's only here that it's adding the apply filter by page data, which in this case is contact or field on contact. And so I want to say, I want to filter the list of activities where my contact ID is equal to contact on the activity. So that's a little bit of a UI trick that's just handy to know where it's at because you need to be able to filter your records. Yeah. And then also the other thing you can do is even, because it was a feature in the old UI designer, the classic designer, that you would have a dashboard button up here on the like top left side of your screen. That's not there anymore. With the section list, what you can do if you say want to have some standardized templates for dashboards, for like dashboard reports, is what I've been doing on pages, actually going down to where's the component? The toggle panel component, which if you remember from when we looked at pages and doing edit pages for records, that the toggle panel is actually how the feed and attachments screen can like pop out from the right side and then go back. And so I drag this element on, there's a tab 1, tab 2, and then you'll see this box here that's a label. So I usually will drag this up here to where the search bar is and kind of like tuck it on the side. And then this is my bar, say metrics. I call the field area metrics on my panel that's going to pop in and out metrics. And then I will usually trim this down to just one tab and call this one tab metrics. Turn on an icon and do There's one that looks a little bit like a chart, this bar graph one. And that should be good. And then what I do from there is I'll put my reports that I want and my dashboards in the little toggle bar. Just kind of drag and drop them in for now. I won't go and set every one of them up, just so you get the idea. And then when the user's in the section list looking at contacts, and then they say, well, I want to see how many calls we've had this week, they can click the metrics bar and it'll pop out from the side. But again, as we've talked, the UI is flexible, so you can put it in between the folders in the contact list. You can put it on the other side of the folders. You could even put in a new flex row option if you wanted to. I think it'd be a flex row. Maybe not. But you can define new like spots to put this metrics panel, so you can hide it and show it wherever makes sense for your users. Just be careful it's not confusing. So that's your other option for section, or for dashboards and reporting. At least that's my standard ones. With the new options, you may come up with something even more clever that if you do, come back and let me know, because I'm always glad to hear new ideas. All right. Any questions on that before I move to looking at the Word templates and doing printables?
Nope, go ahead.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at setting up some printable reports that you can say, like, click a button and go like generate quote or create template letter. And the way you start those is you go to the system designer, and then under system setup, there is report setup. And so you can see there's a couple in here already that are defined as type Microsoft Word. They have a section listed, and then they have a name. So say, like we were talking about doing quotes, I just mentioned, if I open this, there will be a report name, a given section that the quote is based around, a template, and some defined fields. So the way that you set these up is, first, you have to tell Creatio what fields you want in the report. So it knows what it's going to be sending to my over to Word. So say we make a new report. If I go over, go back to my list and do new report, and say, let's go off of contacts, just because we were looking there. Contacts. I'm gonna call this like template letter. Maybe I want, if I can spell it. That was right. So maybe I want like a form letter that I can just snatch down from the contact record or generate a process to have with the fields filled out, ready to go to the printer to hand off to somebody or mail to them or send as an email attachment, however I would use it. I have to then define what data I want in it. So I can say that I want, I'm doing a letter. Maybe I want the contact's full name. I want, if I go down the list of elements on the record, maybe I want their address. And then maybe I want their city, just the elements of their address together, city, state. Province. And do like country. And you get the idea that I'm just building this out. That anything I want, maybe I want to include their phone number on here. Like, yeah. That's fields from contact, just where there's one-to-one, like one contact is going to have one name. If I wanted to say, do like a summary report on cases, maybe like I'm saying, like maybe I want to like a report for a help desk agent. And I want to do like, these are the cases you did this month, or maybe they need to submit it to a manager. It's like, these are the cases I did this month. That's going to be for one contact, several records. So what I can do is where these are one-to-one records of like I have one full name. I can do report tables, which will be, say, my table object that I want to pull from is going to be cases, and then because I put in cases, Creatio's going to try to fit it. So column on cases, contacts, I want you to call it cases in the report, and it's done the necessary connections. In this case, it's connected the contact field, which just from working with cases, I know is a contact that submitted the case. If I wanted to do my caseworker that submits the cases they processed, I just have to change the field to assignee, which is also contacts. It's just a different connection to contacts, which would be more the one I want. And then under the table columns, I could define as like, well, the report should include the case's subject line, the case's registration date, maybe like when it was submitted, and maybe the case's status, just to connect a couple. I can have sorting on the list because this element is going to make a table in Word. So I can say the table, when it's drag and drop onto the Word document, it should sort ascending or descending on registration date, for example. And then if, say, I wanted a list of cases that were just the closed cases, I can actually go table filters and add another one of these filters here to do status closed. So that way it's only the completed cases. I mean, it's only report the ones that I actually resolved. We don't want the open ones in the report. And then I also have the option here, this hide the table if it contains no data. Just if I'm running the report for these are my cases, maybe we just want to hide the table because there's no relevant data in it. I think in this case, I'd probably want to show the table just so that whoever's getting the report can visually see that there was nothing there. But if it makes sense for your report, you can tell Creatio if nothing's in it, just don't render an empty table. Just get rid of it. And you can add as many report tables as you want. You can add more report data. And then on this left side, you can see there's two checkboxes. That is show in the section list view, show in the record edit page. As of right now, these purely apply to the classic UI. The new UI doesn't react to these flags yet. But just so that if you're watching this video and you just need to know as a reference what I'm talking about, let me go to one of the older pages. I'm going to go to invoices, which is still on the classic UI. And so going back to this, the section list view, if I check this true, would show it in this spot where I pick a given invoice and you see open, copy, delete. It would then have the printable there. If I do show in the section record page, that would be if I open the invoice, double click on the record, and then you can see this one actually is set up that there's a print button and I can choose which printable I want to generate. And that's if you want to have the button visible to your user. Like if it's a template letter that's just a form letter for saying, hi, this is a message from our office, and maybe it makes sense to put it on the contact record. If you want to use this report for, say, like a daily email, that like report process runs maybe the end of the day, snatches up all of the relevant records for the cases processed today. If we did our little report as cases today, assembles them together into a table, puts them in a Word document, and then just attach to it an email and send off to the manager. The user never even has to see it on a record in the page. You could just have the printable runs in the background, and you just leave both those flags checked untrue, and they could be used in a business process still. Yeah. Which the elements, by the way, if I go to a business process, is called the process file element. Just real quickly to show you. So this one actually is for sending an email, but it's under the little box with the wand and process file. And all you have to do is say, you can pull from attachments, but say you want to use a printable, you do generated report, and then which report to generate, you'll get your list of printables that we just set up, and there's our template letter. And then because the template needs a given contact or contacts to process for, it'll just ask, how should I filter it? Which you can give an ID, you could give context of type caseworker, like however it's defined in your system to it makes sense for your workflow. But that's how you could use the printable in a business process. And then, so that's the Creatio side of the setup. You define all those fields, but as of right now, you still need to tell Creatio how to use them, how to make them look good in Word. Yeah. And you can see there's a spot here for a template, but which if I had the file, and normally this is what I would do because I work mostly on a Mac, and right now the Word add-on doesn't exist for Mac yet. It only works on Word, and so I have a laptop I'm going to swap to show you. But I really usually can just export it and then re-upload it here. That's always an option. Or you can use the add-on, which while I set this up to transfer, if I go to this tab, there's a page on the Creatio Academy for Microsoft Word reports where you can get the Creatio plugin for Word. But screen share, do window, do Word. So hopefully this will work. Should be able to trade off now. It's trying to come up. There we go. Okay, so you should be able to see Word now. And the thing that will change when you log into Word, after you've installed the plugin, is that there'll be a new Creatio tab. And there'll be a connect button, and all you have to do is put in the URL for your instance and the login credentials. So just log in your user, and then you'll have the option to select a report. And when you go through this list, it'll give you every printable that is available in your Creatio instance. And so say I want to look at, let's look at one of these ones that's in here. Yeah. Through the limitations of this connection, I wasn't able to connect directly to our instance in time for today, but I just want to show you a little bit of how building these works. So say I do this contract summary one. You can see they're grouped by the objects they're built off of. But I pick the report. Creation is going to take a second as it gets connected with Word. And then because I defined a template already, the elements are going to come up. It'll give me what is currently defined as our Word piece. Oh, hang on. Apologies. Laptop is older and is just only slightly struggling. I'm just trying to keep an eye on the screen share. There we go. So I get my template in the middle, which was pre-built. So there is elements here. And then on the right, I'll get the report data, which is my information from Creatio. And then to add my pieces to the page, all I have to do, whether it is one of those one-to-one report data fields like full name or a given like table of data like cases, is I just have to go to this Word report data on the right side and drag and drop it to Word, which because this machine is really slow, I'm not going to be able to get too fancy with it. But you see that I can drag owner to the page and then it'll appear. And once you're working in this template, you can get fancy with the word formatting, as long as you're using that the caret that you can see. If I zoom in a little bit, it has the field name and then like the double carets on either side, as the formatting. As long as Creatio is able to see that macro, you can do whatever you want. You can make the tables different colors. You can change the fonts. You can make the text bold and italicized, however you want to make the report data look nice. And then whenever you're done making those changes, all you have to do is save to Creatio, and it'll take your current version of the template, put it back into your Creatio instance, and then it's available for use. Make sense? Cool.
Yes, it does.
All right. So I'm gonna stop sharing on this laptop before it keels over, and go back to my main machine. All right. So that is Printables. All right. Next thing on our list, we're going to look at portals. So if I go to the system designer, I can go to portal setup, where I can start configuring some page views for portal users. There's a couple different ways you can get started with this. We'll just look at probably the simpler side of things with SSP portal, and doing like cases and just allowing users to come in, submit a case, get updates from a portal or from a caseworker internally. And what you do to start is you can have your external users. We looked a little bit that there's external users, external org roles, and org functional roles. Very similar to your internal roles. It's just you can say that these are portal user ones. You can do some page changes, which under this main page is your login, which Creatio always puts this big banner in. I usually will either get rid of it or replace it, but it by default has some tables for my current cases and my popular articles. And then you can come in and add either new tabs for this dashboards or edit the existing ones. As of right now, currently it's still on the older dashboard designer. It is on the roadmap for Creatio to do this kind of main homepage, more like the nice Freedom internal homepage, but just as of right now, this is still what the portal uses. Yeah, but you can make changes here, add some new dashboards, say that you want to click the plus button and do a new gauge or a widget. They'll be the same pieces that we see in the Freedom Designer. You just pick them here. And once you say that you want a chart, it'll come back to the same screen with pick object. And how do you want to filter it? So you do like activities, and then I want to filter my activities by whether they're complete and how they connect to a certain record. Same as we were doing in the contact record, just the slightly older classic UI. But once you've done that, there is also, if I go back to the system designer, there's an external user profile page and an external organization page, which for the portal, the user profile is how your given login can come and say, actually, my email is this, not that. Kind of, you can expose like a limited amount of data to the user so that they can upkeep their own records and say, no, if you're trying to call me, that's not the right number, kind of things. You can configure that, like what's available to them here. The profile does pull from the contact record, and you can pull these elements onto the page. That's all the fields that are on contacts normally. It's just a different view that is usually pared down on options. If I exit that out, the external organization page is for if you group users under a certain organization, essentially. Yeah, and it's kind of what it sounds like, but it's not something you would. I feel like you'd see too much with the like a help desk portal, maybe like yeah, because usually people just log in, they submit their tickets. But say you're running like a partner portal and you have different organizations that you do partner activities with, you may want to group those users together to say that they're all at this partner organization. Um, you could and then you can designate users within that organization to manage their own group. You can see here that there's a detail that is external users. That allows somebody at that partner organization that you've designated as admin to say, oh, of my 5 users, they can do this or that on the portal. And same thing is with the contact page. This pulls from the account. You can make some values visible to them. Because this is more, at least out of the box, intended for that user management, there isn't as much on the page, but you could also add to say like, put the organization's address on, so the admin could help you upkeep that data and say like, oh no, the email's different now. Not that that would happen more frequently, like that would happen less frequently with an organization, but you get the idea. You could make it an option. And then the one last thing that you see, if we're working on the situation of with like a help desk, the portal view, we wouldn't have set up a case page at this point. That's login welcome page, login how to change my email, but then how can I configure what the case pages will look like? If I go under the workplace setup, there's 2 pieces. So we have a workplace, and you'll notice most of these are general in the workplace setup. They're all for internal users. But then there's a couple here that are portal pages. So if I open the portal workspace, they'll just be main page, cases, and knowledge base. In the classic UI designer, you would click the section wizard and a section that has been added to a case page. Like if you add this to a portal, Creatio will save, and in the section wizard, add a new tab for portal where you change the internal users view under section, and then portal edit page will allow you to make a case page that's based off the same object but has different tabs, maybe in different layouts that are designated for a more limited view. In the classic UI, which I'll show you this one because it's still a little bit in the transition, you just click the edit page and then you build from here, drag your fields onto the page and save it. It's not too different than that. It's just more limited than the Freedom Designer. The page is similar with your fields on the left side. But you build out your portal view here, and then you would have to click Section Wizard and then save. If your portal's on the Freedom Designer, what you can do is go to the Application Hub through the System Designer, Application Hub, and through the case object, you can assign Freedom pages to it. So what do I even mean by that? Because we haven't looked at an object yet. So say I click on the service application because we're going to look at cases, and I want to look at the data models. I want to see where all of the objects involved in this application are, which, because it's service, is going to have cases in it. And for the case object here, if I click on it, I'll get the object view, which is kind of more of an admin screen of a case. And I can see that on this left side, I've got several groupings that I'll go over to, since we haven't looked at these yet. There's the inherited columns, which are older values added throughout the Creatio comes with essentially. The cases when you first install the application, cases is going to have a status, it's going to have a subject that's inherited from the application. Columns are anything that you add. So during your application configuration, if you say put in a case internal priority number and an external priority number, those would be new values, and those would come under columns. You can do indexes on the tables. We won't look too much at it. There's events that you can fire off on different signals, the object source code if you would like to look at it. And then what we're really looking for, pages. So you can have under here this is where you can configure the freedom options for pages. And then it's not going to let me do this as a, of course it's not. Let me make a replacing object for this. Replacing object. Case. So while this is saving, I couldn't make changes to that case because that was an out-of-the-box Creatio default package version of cases. So I have to make a replacing object and inherit those fields so that I can make changes to it. Because the original cases was in a locked package that I can't make changes to. All right, so now I should be able to make changes. So if I do page list here and do external users, I could define the external users are portal users and say that I want them to use. I wonder if there's a version included in this. Yeah, external cases form page. And so that'll just have the form page options. And then this, the page for adding a record is where I put if I wanted to have like a mini page. That kind of smaller 3 or 4 fields to add before the full record appears. I could put it there, or I guess if I wanted to just a completely different full page, I could do that too if it made sense for my use case. But then just to show you the default page, I can click the box here. Yes, I would like to save my changes. And Creatio is going to open that up for me. And then there we go. So we've got a old case page that has, oh, look, so they put the feedback over here. All right. Built out like response terms, what's the case priority, and then they've got the little chat box here so that you can communicate with the internal Creatio agent and go back and forth. And then, so this is my portal cases page. I can make changes from here if I wanted to. Any questions on that?
Nope.
All right. So that's kind of an overview on getting started with the portal. And then the last thing we want to look at before we run out of time is looking at web services. So I'm going to skip across my tabs back to the system designer one more time. We're very much in the system designer today. Under import integration, there's the data import, which that's the Excel import if you wanted to load a spreadsheet. But what we're going for is web services integration setup. And we're going to connect, look at how you connect with an API. And there is a page on the marketplace, or not on the marketplace, on the Academy that I very much recommend looking at about setting a really simple API for doing currency conversions so that you can reach out and find like what's the current exchange rate between US dollars and euros today. I recommend trying it. It's really simple and it'll really help you to get your feet wet with doing the APIs in Creatio. And the way that this works with web services is that under this screen, you define a web service and then the methods you want to call. So I'm going to look at Creatio's out of the box one, the marketplace API as our example, but which I can't edit because I don't have the same thing with cases. It's in a locked package, but you can see that they've set up a name for the API and the URL where it calls to make requests. Yeah. They have a little code in Creatio. They can define what type it is. It can be REST or SOAP, and then what package it's included in. And then under the methods is the actual methods you call. So if you're like posting data or getting data, you put them under your methods. And what you can do, if I open this one, this is for Creatio to actually go out to the marketplace server, like your instance, to talk to Creatio and say, like, the applications I have installed, is there any new versions of them? Because I would like to have the most up-to-date version. And so it just makes a request to the marketplace to say, here's the app, and is there a new version? And so let's see. So you give it a name just for your own reference, code in Creatio, so the Creatio can reference. The method address is that bit that's beyond the base URL that you would have defined in the last screen. And you see there's a couple values here there's a couple variables for like the app ID, app file. In terms of setting up your parameters, you have to look at the API's documentation as to what it needs. For setting up your request parameters, in Creatio's case, it needs the ID of the application, what the name is of the application, its code, and then also it looks like Creatio passes in its current version, so it can know in the API, like I'm running Creatio 8.08. What's a valid update for me? Because that's a couple of versions behind, this Creatio instance can't run an application that's only validated to work with Creatio 1.0 or 8.10, because that's a later update. And so it looks like it'll filter out some of the responses. And then under the response parameters, same thing, you'll get ID back, date of last update, current published version, and then Creatio can use the data however they wish once it comes back. You build your methods, and this is just like a templated how Creatio should make the call. Like, what should this call look like and where is it going? But then if you go into a business process, if I say go back into our Bootcamp application, and I'm going to make a new business process real quick. It's in the business process designer that you can actually use those calls. So if I go under my system elements again, that Creatio is going to do without input from me, and I do call web service. If I put this down, it'll ask me what service to call. We've only got one, the marketplace API, and then it'll ask me to pass in parameters. So I can have the workflow do whatever to get this information, like what application do I want to check, pass it in at the beginning here, and then say, I think Creatio's got their own version that causes a little update button to appear in the hub, but say I want to put in a little element that will send me an email. Like if I'm the system administrator, I need to tell Creatio I would indeed like to update to that new version of the application. And I may not know it exists unless I go check. So I can say, put in an email element. I pick my sending email, and it's going to go to, I could pick like a user role for system administrators, or I got to have some logic to retrieve my contact. But then I'm going to have a little templated message that just goes out and says like, update. What would I have in one? It's just case updates. But I could build a little email template as we looked at, and do just, hey, Kevin, application, insert name here, has a new version. that is ready to install. And I can use the web service data how I want on once it comes back. I could also do it if I wanted to integrate with another service that I have to make a call based on some criteria that maybe I'm going to like wake up on a timer in the morning to go wake daily and go out to another system and say, hey, I need the newest records that you've generated since yesterday. Yeah. Creation or the other service is going to hand back that data in a certain format. Depending on what I'm integrating with, I may be able to talk to that system, the developers on that system, and ask for some slightly different data to come over. Or it might be what I might be stuck with it. I've integrated in the past with systems that like I even found some data quality problems in and was like, hey, you have a problem, and they were like, deal with it. And so what I could do is I get the raw data back from this web service, but then I can have things like formula elements and read elements, and I can take the raw data and transform it. So like if they give me text values for what should be a currency, I can cast it to a decimal so that I can stick it into the right fields in Creatio. They give me like dates, I can make sure that the date as a string is transformed into uh, a date format that makes sense. And then once I've transformed it, I can add it into the relevant records in the system. So if they like, I want to load like quotes or invoices from another system, or um, I need to record like bills that I'm loading from like a publicly available repository of bills for a current session. I can pull all of that information in, and then I add it into our IA in Creatio so that it's visible for users, and it's also an option for business processes. Like with the dates, for example, if you want reminders on things, a string date's not going to work. I mean, it needs to be an actual date field in Creatio so that Creatio knows how to recognize that that date is today to send the reminder. So you do the necessary transformations, and then you can stick it into those records. So that's kind of the difference. Like the web service page is where you define like how you make those calls, and then the business process is actually where, based on the conditions you define, you use the calls. So it's like toolbox and then using the tools. The quick thing I want to show before we wrap up on that, if I go back to the web service designer, if you're looking at documentation, which you probably should be if you're putting an integration together, because there should be some page that tells you how to make calls, and so you have to match that format. Yeah, most of that documentation is going to include examples, and some of them I've had has been a little iffy on showing me exactly the formats, and all of them I need are the like just the response or just the request. But if you're able to get an example request in one of these formats, you can actually take it, say that you've got an example, and then Creatio will actually open a little box that you can paste it in and try to parse the call. So that you say, this is what it's going to look like, and Creatio will try to look through it and be like, okay, so if that's what it looks like, then you're going to need a text field that says this, you're going to need an authentication key, and you're going to need this. And it'll prompt and say, do you want to add these as your request parameters? And then same thing with the response. Yeah. Though, let me see if it'll make a test call on this. If you get a little trick that I always use, if you get just the request, if it gives you just the response, I can't really work the same trick. But if it gives you just the request, put in the request, and you can still make a test request here to the service. If it succeeds, you'll get these 4 tabs where it says the request parameters, response parameters, JSON, and raw. And if you don't, it'll just say request and then the raw, and it'll say error. Actually, it'll do JSON and raw, and it'll say error. But once you've gotten the response, you can actually then just copy the response there and go back to Creatio and paste it in, just to try to save you some time. All right, I think that's everything. think that's everything I had on my list. Any questions on any of that before we wrap up?
No questions. Thank you,
Uh,
Kevin, for leading another good session.
I think
What
Francine's
we'd be
got her hand
looking,
up.
okay.
Yes,
Thanks so
Francine.
much. Yeah, thanks so much, Kevin. That was fantastic, especially the web services overview. So I just have a question about the new Freedom UI with how it deals with section list views. So
Mhm.
I understand how you can add metrics to that and everything, but it seems like they're moving away from having a separate metrics view for each section. Is that
Yes.
just so do you recommend when switching over to the new Freedom UI to, I guess, try to prepare your users to just to be looking for those same dashboards they used to see in the section pages, the sections in the dashboard section instead? Just for a user, that's a pretty
Yeah.
significant divergence, you know?
Hmm. I think I haven't played around with it enough to have a firm opinion on it, but I
Mhm.
know you can redirect to other pages as well. So it's something to play with, that you can have a button in the page wizard that is like open new page, like an open a specific page, that you might be able to build out a more dedicated dashboard view, as opposed to my like side of the page toggle that I did. Um,
Okay. Yeah, because we
I'm
have
not sure.
several dashboards that are section specific right now, and I'm just not sure
Yeah.
how we would even make that change with how they're kind of pushing people to do the sections now in the new UI. But
Mhm.
just something to think about, I guess. I'm sure there's lots of ways to go about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anything else? And we'll wrap this up and see folks in the next session. Thanks again, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye.